How y'all doing today? My name is Josh Baker. We'll just open it up a little bit. We just opened up a little bit early so we can start getting y'all's questions into the chat box. So if y'all have questions that you would like answered, now would be a good time to start typing them after you introduce yourself and say, hello first. And then once we say hello, then we can get our questions into the chat box. And yeah, we have Bryn with us from Precision Camera today. She's going to be our chat room moderator. So she'll be helping us keep track of all the questions and make sure that I stay on task. All right, let's see if we can break some records today of who all we have. Hey, Jonathan, what's up, man? Michael, how y'all doing? Hey, Jonathan. Hey, man, your automotive stuff has been killer lately. Well, not lately, but in the last couple of months, man, I've really enjoyed seeing um, your photos on my feed, man. They look really, really good. Your panning shots are chef's kiss. Very nice. Oh yeah, you bet. Yeah, you get to go out to the track more than I do. It's kind of hard for me with kids at home. I don't get as many kitchen passes, or it's client work, and I don't get to go out when I'd really like to. But yeah, so like Brent was saying, if y'all have any questions that y'all for sure want me to go over, or if there's topics or areas of concern that y'all would like for me to go over, now's a good time to kind of pop them into the chat box so that we can start getting those prepped. Yeah, white balance adjustment. Jonathan, that's a great question. Yeah, we can absolutely get into it. One of the things that helps me most um, with white balance adjustment is my X-Rite color checker passport. It has a gray card. And when the light starts getting weird, I'll just take a shot of it, every so often. And that way I have a great white balance adjustment. And that gives me a nice target neutral to use. Hey, Bren, is there a link you can throw in there for that X-Rite color checker, Passport 2? That gets asked about quite a bit, so it'd probably be good to have in the chat box. Actually, a friend of mine just came by and borrowed mine. The other good thing that it does is inside Lightroom um, you can build camera specific profiles by serial number. And so not only are you getting better white balance, that's part of the tool, but the other part is that you're going to get more accurate colors because you're profiling your camera. So I think it's one of those things that just really, yeah, there you go. Perfect. It's one of those tools that if color is important to you, if white balance is important to you, it's a no-brainer. They're small. They're about the size of an index card. They're hard plastic. I've taken one underwater with me. We've taken them in a whole lot of places, and they really provide a great way to neutralize your cameras and create new profiles for them. It's especially important for me, like if we're shooting a wedding or a corporate event, it may be me and a couple other photographers, and I'll make every photographer shoot a test plate with that color checker, and then I can build inside Lightroom, I can build color profiles for each person's camera, and that way all my presets are neutralized against those colors instead of having Sony colors or Nikon colors or Canon colors. Joe, have a hard time wrapping my hand around organization to share. Oh man, yeah, Joe, that's That's a lot of back and forth. Um, so Joe, in answer to your question, I prefer editing and organizing in Classic as well. And what we'll be talking about is going to be mostly Classic today. But what I do, yeah, I definitely edit in Classic, and then if I'm sharing with clients, I export, a sub gallery, right? So my edit gallery as my JPEGs, and then typically I'm typically sending those into my Zenfolio account, and that way I have more managed permissions for sending to clients. The problem with CC is that you're kind of metered on your bandwidth, essentially, right? You only have so much free. And that's their revenue model is going to be paying for storage over time. And so for me, once I'm done with a photo in Lightroom, I'm going to export it into something. For me, it's I'm uploading into Zenfolio, but you might use Google Drive or Dropbox or something else, and that'll give you more file permissions, and it'll give you more control over kind of that last mile delivery to your clients. Now, like during a shoot, during the time that I'm shooting for a client, I might send a couple from my camera via Wi-Fi to my phone and edit those in CC, and then I might text or message them 4 or 5 highlights just to kind of give them an appetizer. But for me, I'm going to edit fully in Classic, and if I need to retouch, I'll retouch in Photoshop. And then those get delivered to a photo hosting site somewhere. For me, I use Zenfolio. If y'all want a Zenfolio discount code, let me know. It's my username is Zulox, but and that'll give you 20% off if that's something you like. But there's a bunch, right? There's Dropbox, Google Drive, iCloud. Microsoft has a OneDrive. There's what's the other one? Not like PickBase or I don't know. There's a bunch. But that way, it's just I would worry that I would run out of room quick to deliver to clients. The other thing I do, like on my phone, I will upload on my desktop to Google Drive, and then I can share from my phone there, right? So if a client asks for one, I can share. Oh, yeah. And again, yeah, Lightroom CC, I know what you meant. Yeah, and that's why I like Zenfolio because they can do like automated slideshows and things like that. But then if they want to buy it just gives me more password control. I feel in Zenfolio or a similar software. But my needs are a little bit different. I shoot a very high Zenfolio here, and um, it gives me more permissioning. So like I can have an access password, I can have a download password, I can deliver digital files, I can sell prints, I can like make my own products and sell through. So it's a little bit more I don't know, high end. If I'm delivering to clients. It's also how I share all my photos with like, my family stuff that I shoot for just my family. That's not client, just family stuff. But I've been using Zenfolio themselves for 11 years since 2009. And I've really enjoyed them. They've always gotten better, a little bit better every year. Um, and so, yeah, I just, instead of having to like flip back and forth between like Classic and CC, I wish they talked better together, but I think it's kind of used. Yeah, Joe. Yeah, I think you get like a 20% discount code if you use Azulox. And in our photo club, we're working on getting some like benefits for our photo club as well. So if y'all don't know, also we have our photo club, which is napfs.org. And so if you're interested in like image reviews and guest speakers and things like that, it's a really chill, just all levels photo club. But I'm working with Zenfolio to get us some stuff for that as well. I happen to know a couple people that work there, so I didn't mean for this to be a Zenfolio chat, but they're good photo hosters. I've had nothing but good luck with them and good service from them. So, what are some other questions that we have? I see that we're starting to get some more people coming into the room. I see Jerry Zerps, who I think is in our photo club. I see some other names I know. So yeah, what's up, everybody? Have a good Friday. Hey, Mike, I see you there as well. What's up, man? Um, so I, and again, thanks to yeah, I do too. Um, thanks to thank you to Precision for hosting these. Um, Jonathan, sharpening on Lightroom. That's a good question. I honestly, I don't sharpen a ton in Lightroom. Um, it's I tried to do my sharpening on a local level, less than a global level. So I like to use tools in Lightroom like Clarity and dehaze as a way to kind of add contrast, but I use them with a brush instead of global. And that's a way to add like points of interest or with radial tool. Um, and that's a way to kind of add local contrast, local sharpening in some areas, but also have some areas that don't like. Not everything needs to be sharpened, right? The sky typically doesn't need to be sharpened, but if I really need to sharpen up a photo, that's probably something I'm going to do in Photoshop, just because the tools are a little bit more powerful, and I can mask in certain areas that I want it to be, and other areas that I don't want it to be. I generally don't think everything in a photo needs sharpening. It kind of crackles it up and makes it kind of uh, it can look brittle. Lightroom's gotten better at it, but I kind of got away from it just because at the beginning of it was so bad. Lightroom like version 2, which everything in Lightroom 2 was kind of bad. They've gotten a lot better, except for slideshow. Slideshow's still the same. That's kind of a forgotten module inside of Lightroom. So again, guys, if y'all are just joining in, if y'all have specific questions, go ahead and say, hey, what's up in the chat box, and ask your questions. Mike, yeah, I do use both classic and mobile, but they don't talk to each other. I use mobile exclusively on my phone just as a way to quick edit and give out some. Well, they do, but I don't. I that's not my workflow. How about that? I Typically the only time I'm using Lightroom on my phone is just to send out quick edits to clients or just a quick share to somebody. My Canon 5D4 has a Wi-Fi, and so I'll just send over 3 or 4 photos from a session, and usually in my car I'll send over some highlights to the client. But in general, that's on my phone, and so it's kind of hard to see all the little stuff. I know that people are doing a great job using it in like on their iPad Pros. There's some also like some really big tablets now, and like they're yeah exactly. I don't have anything cool like that. I don't have a sweet iPad Pro. That if I had that, I would probably use that more in my workflow, because there's certainly times I would love to be on my couch editing instead of being at my desk on my desktop. But I'm a power user as well, and that sounds weird to say, but on average, I shoot about 5,000 photos a week, and Lightroom Mobile just doesn't support that volume, right? Because you're having to like upload, and I know you can use smart previews and all that, but I need as much speed as I can get because I want to shoot more and edit less. And so, it's nice to have Lightroom Mobile and to have all those tools on my phone. But it's not as nice as doing on like a 13-inch iPad Pro or like the Microsoft Surface or any of that side, type of device. There's also like the big like Wacom's or Cintiqs that can support it as well. And I don't have anything that cool. I wish I did. But I have a really beefy desktop that I do most of my editing on. Just because I need to go through. Like yesterday, I think I edited like 300 photos in 30 minutes. And so that's kind of my workflow. So Dave asks, hey Josh, if I use a preset to import a folder of photos taken with different lens body. So Dave, not really. It's gotten better. Okay. So that Lightroom had an update, and that'll probably be the first thing I flip over to in just a second. Lightroom has gotten better at recognizing different camera presets, but lens correction is not one of them. It is so yes to half of your question. it has gotten definitely better at recognizing bodies, and you can set up different presets based on different camera serial numbers and bodies. That's actually a change they made in their February update, I believe. February, March update. I think it's February. So if y'all want to see that, well, I'll start flipping over there and kind of show you where to set that up. But you can, instead of having it automatically go to Adobe Standard as kind of the preset profile, you can set up import presets based on camera serial numbers. Lens corrections, no, that's not intelligent enough to do that. I wish it was. That's kind of the one big annoyance that I have, because I might shoot with 8 lenses on a shoot, and it's kind of annoying to like have to flip back and forth. So let me go ahead and flip over to Lightroom, and I'll show you where those are. Oh, that was odd. Okay, so let's go to share screen. Yeah, because this is good. So we're here in the library module of Lightroom Classic. If you've taken my 101 class, these are some of the photos that we use. But what I want to show you is under Edit, Preferences. And so now on Presets, under Preferences, the raw defaults, you can click to say use default specific to a camera model. So let's say you have multiple cameras, right? I have a 5D4, a 5D3, a 5D2. So I could set up different presets based on each camera on their import. You can even do it all the way down to the serial number. And so what this is going to try to do generally is say whatever preset, whatever camera profile you were shooting in, if you select this now, Lightroom is going to try to recognize that. So let's say you had your camera set to like camera landscape. So instead of Lightroom importing as Adobe Standard, it's going to try to find the closest profile that matches camera landscape. But you can also make different changes in this drop down. I'm not sure. Yeah. So anyway, you want to make this so Adobe default is that Adobe Standard profile and whatever it has. Camera settings, you can configure it to be by camera, or you can have on preset. You could select your own preset. So like I have one, like if I know I've been outside shooting landscape HDRs, I have an import preset for my 5D3 HDR and for my 5D4 HDR. And so that generally tells me that I've been shooting with my 16 to 35 or whatever. So you can have different user presets, and I'll show you on the import dialog box where you can have those. But again, it is not smart enough to necessarily auto update the lens profile. That's absolutely something I wish they would do, but I think that'll probably be coming soon, just based on the fact that they now allow you to start selecting presets based on different cameras. It used to always just default to Adobe Standard, and now you can actually make different changes to what you want to have come in. Does that make sense? Cool. Jonathan, do the camera profiles landscape? No. So so Jonathan, just to answer your question, is in the latest February update for Lightroom Classic, Adobe is now going to try and match whatever your camera profile was, right? Whether it was, standard, portrait, landscape, cinema, whatever. It's going to try to use a camera matching profile that closely matches that. And so let's talk about profiles right now. We've kind of been talking a lot about that. Let me go back and kind of show you where those are, because it makes a really big difference. So I'm going to go back and share my screen. This is some of me just talking. So if we're in Lightroom Classic and we go to the develop module, and again, to get there, you can either go up to the toolbar and select develop, or you can hit the letter D. D as in dog. Will get you there. If you want to flip back to library, you can hit the letter G as in grid, and that'll go back to the library module. Okay. So right now we're in the develop module, and let's pick this nice warrior cosplay shoot I did. Okay. So right now the profile is set for camera standard because that's what I probably shot it on my camera when I was shooting. It was set to camera standard. But if I scroll down, I have one called Canon 5D4 PCU. So I was test shooting against my X-Rite color checker in class, and so I just, as a demo, I was showing this profile. So watch the color when I flip between standard and this 5D4 PCU profile. Okay, can we see how the colors shift pretty dramatically? And again, if I went to Adobe standard, see how muted they are, right? So we're going to have to apply a lot more work to our files using the Adobe standard profile versus using a profiled profile. A little wordplay there, but look how much difference, especially in the yellows and the greens and the saturation levels that we get based on shooting a calibrated profile. And the way to get those calibrated profiles, if you scroll up in the chat, there's a link to the X-Rite Color Checker Passport 2. It's a super handy tool. There's a colored target on one side and a gray card on the other. And it allows you to profile your camera and or cameras, and you can have different profiles for each camera. I typically shoot one in daylight and one in tungsten. And those are the two light sources I tend to work in the most. I don't think you need to do one in every light situation. I think a daylight one and a tungsten one is just fine. On one of my older Canon 1D Mark IIIs, the profile gave it back 25 units of blue. So if you're a landscape photographer and you have blue skies and your camera was deficient 25 units, that alone would be absolutely worth the price of that color checker. It's just getting my blue skies back to where I want without having to crazy over crank my vibrance and saturation to get the skies back to normal. So I'm a big believer in creating custom profiles for your cameras. It's just going to get what the camera's actually it's going to get more of what your sensor is capable of out in Lightroom instead of using the Adobe standard or the camera standards. And so they're accessed right here where it says profile. Now it can be a little confusing. Let me go into this widget here. If we hit browse, there's going to be a whole bunch of them. Okay. There's favorites, which are the ones I've starred. And if I scroll down, there's Adobe Raw. There's a bunch there. There are camera matching, which are the ones that match as best they can your camera profiles that come installed in your camera. There's also artistic, black and white, and modern. So if there's any of these that you like, let's say, I don't know, modern 6, let's click on that. And let's say we like the look that it does to we can star it. And once we star it, it's going to add it to our favorites. And when we hit close, now Modern 6 is in our drop-down menu. Now, Modern 6 isn't one that I typically use, but just to know how to get there, if we go to Browse, I can turn that off by unhighlighting it, removing it from favorites. And then when I close that out again, it's no longer going to be automatically selected in this drop-down menu here. So just a little bit more on camera profiles because they're actually the first funnel that all of your color and image data goes through. Think of this as the color foundation to your photo house. Okay. And so you don't want to have a poor foundation, right? You want to have a very good, very solid, very stable, very accurate foundation. And at the very least, try to match whatever preset profile that you were shooting with. Right. So in this case, camera standard, that's pretty good. But the most accurate one is the ones you create for yourself using something like a color checker passport. It's just going to make your editing that much easier. You're not going to have to push and pull your files as much because you're starting from a neutral base instead of having to overcome any of the manufacturer's biases and how they in their color science. Show the profiles when you browse them. Question. Hey, Phil, how you doing? Jonathan, yeah, the profiles, so it does. They're just at the very bottom. So if you're still using something like an older version of Lightroom, they shifted where they were located. So right now, in the current versions of the CC version Classic, they're up here at the top, right? So we can go to color, right? We can go to portrait, and we can do all those other ones. If you're using older versions, you have to scroll all the way down on this right panel to where it says calibration, and they should be, it'll say process, and then the next thing it'll say is profile. So they used to be somewhat hidden at the very bottom right, all the way down on the very last menu. Now, because they're such an important feature, they're such a good foundation to your photos. They've moved them up to the top, so that's a shift in some of the versions. It's one of the only user interface shifts they've made in a while. So again, let me just show you kind of where those are. So if we go to where it says Profile Browse, okay, and then let me close this down so just so we can see it a little bit better. Yeah, so there's a bunch of different ones. So this is also kind of a way for, I feel like this is a way for Lightroom and Adobe to have snuck in some other visual presets. And it's a way for them to kind of create different looks. So like there's artistic, right? And that's going to create a very different look. Let's say artistic 2, right? If we just hover over, it'll show us the changes. And man, they're drastic color funnel changes, right? And what this is doing is taking those, when you're shooting in RAW, it's taking those ones and zeros and it's running it through the first image funnel. Okay, does that make sense? And so if we want to add them to our drop down, we just star them. Okay. And so any ones, I could star them and they'll show up then in this drop down menu. So for me, I went through, I liked Modern 4 and Vintage 4, but configure it how you want. But right there in that browse is how you're going to get to all of them. And it's kind of hidden. If you didn't know it was there, you would never know it's there. And there's a couple tools like that in Lightroom that if you don't know that you can do it, it's hard to guess that that's what you would do. The crop tool has some hidden features that if you didn't know the keyboard shortcuts, I don't know how you would get to them through the menu. And I'll show you those in just a second. Let me see if there's any other profile questions. Yeah, I agree on the yeah, I agree with Phil, absolutely. Yeah, the Lightroom and Photoshop, $10 a month is maybe one of the best deals you're gonna get. Photoshop by itself every year used to be what, like 800 or something like that. And Lightroom used to cost like 150, 200, something like that. And so honestly, if you're paying 120 a year, that's about, what you would have spent. Yeah. So how to make a profile your favorite? Sure. Again, how to make a profile, just go to browse and click on that star in the top right of it. And that's going to say add to favorites. And then when we close the profile browser, now we're going to have it here right there. Artistic 2 is now in our favorites drop down. Yeah. And then if you don't want it there, you would just go back to browse and unstar it. And that'll take it out of that favorites drop down list. But this Canon 5D4, again, for me, this is kind of my baseline when I'm editing with my cameras, right? The ones that I've profiled. And it's just going to create a much more solid base to what we're doing. So Mary asks, so Mike, I see your question on profiles versus presets. So for me, it's profiles are their foundations to my user presets. Profiles are the foundational tool and presets are kind of the final sculpting tool. So if we look at presets on the right on the left over here, right, they all can do different things. So we could have a preset, and by this also, it's a develop preset, right? There's a lots of different types of presets in Lightroom. In Lightroom's terminology, a preset is just a saved bundle of instructions. Most people, when they say the word preset in Lightroom, they're referring to these develop presets, okay? But they work in conjunction with each other, right? If we could use, like let's say this black and white high contrast, but I could actually use it also with my oh, that's not going to allow me to do that. So black and white's maybe not the best choice, but we can use them as a base for the other things we want to do, right? So I could make changes. I could do a bunch of stuff starting with my profile, right? Changing all my highlights, changing in those instructions, and then I can create a preset based on that, right? So I like the way this looks. I like the white balance. I like the tonality, right? I've made changes to the tone. I can come over here to the plus key where it says add new preset, hit plus, and we can create a preset, and we could call it something like Warrior Cosplay 5D4, right? Something like that, so that I know that it's using that 5D4 profile. And we can hit create with any or all of these instructions clicked. I tend, when I'm making presets, not to save over graduated radial because those are more image specific than overall tonality. And so I would hit create. And now anytime I want to use this tonality with this profile, now I have that preset saved. Does that make sense? So I think they work very well together, but I tend to use my camera profile as the basis for my presets. Because if you try to use, if you're starting with a bad profile and then you try to make up for it by using a preset, you're kind of fighting yourself there. All right. Yeah. Hey, Todd, what's up, man? Yeah, presets, and I think there are certainly a lot of presets out there, right? There's certainly a lot of developed presets out in the world to buy and sell. And the thing about them is, and Lightroom in particular, right? It's non-destructive. So if there's a preset that you kind of like that maybe gets you 50% of the way, yeah, download it, try it out. But you can still then move all your sliders around, right? Let's say it's, you like the preset, but it's too dark. Then you can change your exposure and then save your own presets based on those sliders that you pre-purchased, right? Or download it for free or whatever. And so, presets, the ones that you don't develop for yourself, I think they're a good starting point for maybe experimenting and seeing what the power of Lightroom is. I certainly use them when I was starting out way more than I do now. But I've developed my own look and my own style in Lightroom. But starting out, I think they can be a good way to kind of see the power of Lightroom and kind of what different looks you can achieve, right? It's one of those things, if you don't know it's there, you would never know it's there. And so if you don't know how far you could push a photo, you would never know to push a photo that far. So, I think they're good. I think the best advice is use them as a starting point, and then always season to your own taste, right? Change that last 10 or 20% so that they fit the way you think a photo should look. Yeah. So let me get back to Mary's question there. Hey, Mary, how you doing? So I've always used click and drag to move images within Lightroom Classic. Recently, I noticed that this action just copies them to new folders. There's some setting I need to change. So I guess, Mary, my bigger question is, why do you need to move photos in Lightroom? So if we understand what Lightroom is, right, that Lightroom is a database and that it tracks all of the changes that we make to photos and kind of where they are. For me, there isn't really a need to move photos, assuming you're on one hard drive. Now, if you're moving them from, let's say, your local machine, your local hard drive, to an external drive, you want to do that inside of Lightroom so that it can track those changes, right? Because Lightroom is a database. If you make changes outside of Lightroom, those changes don't track. If you make them from Lightroom themselves, it tracks those changes and those movements. So if you wanted to, say, move a set of images from your local hard drive to a external drive, and you still want Lightroom to be able to be aware of where those movements are, yes, by all means, do that inside of Lightroom. Collections are kind of where to go. There's just, Lightroom kind of is a new paradigm, right? Photoshop is that older way, right? There's folders, there's files. You open a file, you do work, you save it back out to a folder. You don't really need to do any of that in Lightroom, right? We don't have to save. It's a database. We can just move things around. We can just make changes to photos without having to move images around. We don't have to do any of that saving and reorganizing because it's all just one giant database. And we can use our filters, we can use our smart collections, and we can use our collections as a way to group and theme photos so that we can get to them. I want to show you the crop tool because I think there's a lot of hidden stuff in there. So if we're in the develop module, we have this crop tool, right? We can get to it by hitting the letter R, crop overlay. And we're presented with this kind of normal rule of thirds overlay. Okay. And I'm going to say the word overlay a lot because if you hit the letter O in the crop tool, it is going to change your overlays. Okay. And so we're going to get a whole lot of different ones. Now we're going to get to something that looks like this, which is the Fibonacci spiral. And you say, well, that's great. It's in the lower right-hand corner, but I want it in the upper left. So if we hit shift, if we hold down shift and hit O, it's going to change the orientation of that Fibonacci spiral as a way then to crop down to a point. Maybe we want that Fibonacci spiral to end on her eye, let's say. And so by using the shift tool, we're able to move the orientation to get back and forth, right? So if we hit shift, I'm holding down shift and tapping the O key, and that's going to modify our overlay. Okay. Now, let's say I want to make a vertical crop out of this tool. Normally, you would try to just go up here and drag. Okay. But dragging only gives you a 45-degree change of direction. Okay. So, how do we make a vertical crop out of a horizontal photo? Oddly, you hit the letter X. Okay. Normally, X would put a flag on the photo as a way to get rid of it. But in the crop tool, by selecting the letter X, it's going to change the orientation of your crop from a horizontal to a vertical. And if I hit it again, it'll go back. So X is our toggle inside the crop tool to go vertical and horizontal. That's one of those things, if you didn't know it was there, I don't even know where in the menu to find to do that. It's not very obvious. So this is something that can frustrate people. They want to make a vertical crop. They're trying to drag that around with the controls, but it only goes 45 degrees, not enough. So X is going to be our modifier key. The other thing that we can do, I'm going to go make a horizontal again. The other thing we can do inside the crop tool is create different aspect ratios. So let's say we wanted to make a crop for a movie, right? We're going to have a photo in a movie, and it's that Hollywood cinema crop. Okay, so we can go to custom and enter in something, or you're making a panorama maybe, and we could enter something like 3:1. So it'd be this really widescreen crop. And once we've made this crop, once we've input it once, it's always going to show up as one of our customs down here. Okay. So we only have to create it once. That's one of the beauties of Lightroom, is we only have to do the work once, and then we can save our work, right? Typically it's called as a preset. I think that's kind of a misnomer because people think develop preset when I say the word preset. But this is just a cool way to, let's say we wanted to do, I don't know, you could do 5:2. I don't know. Any number you want. And then the next time you bring up any photo, you're going to have that ratio down there at the bottom under your custom. So that's a nice way if you have very specific print needs, or if it's going into a book, or you have a custom frame that you want to put in that's very specific. This is a great way to get your cropping to be a certain aspect ratio. And the cool thing again, right, with Lightroom is that it's non-destructive. So if I don't like that crop, I can simply go back to original, and it'll bring it back to the original format and the original aspect ratio of what I shot with. So I think the crop tool definitely has some hidden power into it as a way to align your photos. I think cropping in general is one of the most powerful things you can do to your photo to get rid of distracting elements, or to kind of reframe the subject in a way that's more visually appealing to your viewers. You can show them screen. Actually, Phil, I don't know all the keyboard shortcuts. That'd be great. Yes. Keywording. So yeah, I'm gonna go through the import dialog box here in just a second, because I think it's a way to set yourself up for success. And I'll show you how you can keyword, and I'll show you some other things in it. So let's just go ahead and take a look at our import dialog. And I just want to cover some things that I think are very important as a way to set yourself up for success for all your other stuff, right? For all your, if you have a good, strong foundation, it's going to be a lot easier. So if we go to import photos and video up from the top left menu, we're going to bring up, let's see. And it probably doesn't show this. Let me click out of this. Sorry, sometimes it doesn't like it when my screen sharing. Okay, let's screen share the import dialog box real quick, because I think it's an important thing to go over. I think there's a lot of kind of hidden features here that we kind of ignore. So in general, Lightroom works left to right. Okay, so in this case, we have our source, right, which is a SD card inside of the card reader slot of my laptop. Okay, we have a source, we have an operation, and we have a destination. Okay, so I have 3 photos selected that I shot on Sunday when I was walking around with my kids. We were just walking around my neighborhood. And so we're going to take a look at those 3 photos. But what we can also do, right, we have 3 photos selected. And I want to tell you the difference between kind of copy, move, and add, because I think there's a little bit of confusion there. I want to clear that up. So what copy does, copy is going to take photos and copy them from our SD card and put them on to at least our local drive. Okay. Move is going to take them off our SD card and put them somewhere. Okay. Add isn't going to do any file movement. It's just going to make Lightroom aware that those photos exist in a certain place. So let's say you have a computer with Lightroom on it and you already have photos on it. You don't need to move them or reorganize them. You just want to make Lightroom aware that they exist on that hard drive. So in that case, you would use add, but we would not want to use add on an SD card, because as soon as I take it out of the card reader, those photos aren't going to be there anymore. So we need to get them onto either a local drive or to an external drive. Okay. So in this case, I'm going to use copy, right? So I'm going to copy them from an SD card onto my local drive. And I have these 3 photos selected here. And before we hit import, though, let's take a look at what else we can do with them. We can also make a second copy. Okay. So we can choose where that copy goes. So if you're like me and you're shooting in the field and we use our laptops in the field to put them onto a local drive, I can hit make a second copy too. And if I had an external drive selected, I could click that, select that external drive, and it would do all of the operations onto my local and do an external at the same time. So if I'm doing things like file renaming, keywording, right, all of those type of operations and movement, we can do it to 2 locations at once. And that's really, to me, a killer feature when I'm in the field, is that I know I can write them exactly the same to an external drive as I can on my local drive. And then that way, when I get home, I can plug that external drive in and I have all my photos there, especially if I've done keywording or renaming. So that's the other big part right here in this file handling, is add to collection, right? So for this, I might want to call a collection something like kids exploring, right? Me and my kids were just walking around. We were shooting bugs and birds, and there wasn't really a theme to it, but we could create a collection called kids exploring. And now throughout my entire Lightroom catalog, anytime I have a type of photo that fits that collection, I can add them to that collection, and I can bring up just those photos that fit that collection. Now, photos can be in multiple collections, right? If we took a trip, right, we might have 2020 travel as a collection. We might have a collection for a specific trip, right? And so files can live in different ones. They're just kind of a loose theme of files. And so it's a way to kind of lasso a big group of photos and view them without having to go to a specific date folder or to a specific location on, your hard drive somewhere. So this is a way to kind of like, over time, let's say you were doing a portrait series, over the course of a year, you might want to add just those sessions to a collection, and then you can view just those photos instead of trying to remember what date you were on, or, what month or what year you even shot them. And that also kind of goes to a question I get asked a lot. Do you use one catalog? Do you use multiple catalogs? For me, I use one catalog because I want to have that big database. I want to be able to search all my photos instead of just that session photo. So for a session might be more like a collection, right? Where we have like a session, we did a family portrait session on bluebonnets. We might call that, the collection family bluebonnets and the date. And then that way we can get to just those files instead of creating new catalogs. Because I think if you create multiple catalogs, you're losing a lot of the functionality in Lightroom for their search, for their keywording, for filtering by their metadata. Okay. Now we could also do things like file renaming, but also on apply during import, we can also, this is also where we can save like on those user presets, right? I might want to have some user preset applied so that it's already applying it where I don't have to go back and reselect it. So on import, I could have it pick up, maybe I want them all to be black and white or whatever, right? So apply during import allows me to choose a preset that I've already created and apply that to them so that I don't have to look at the, kind of the raw file. I can already look at like kind of a prepped version of the file. For me, I think that's a good way too. If you're going to be doing culling, a lot of times I don't want to look at the raw file because it's like, they're kind of uninteresting. So if I apply a user preset on import, it kind of punches them up, or it's just a way to kind of give them a different look when I'm on import. This is also a way for keywording, right? So for these files, I might want to add keywords. I might have quarantine, right? This is something I shot during the quarantine. I'm not sure how to spell it. I live at the Commons at Rowe, so this is the location of where I did it. I could hit birds, bugs, macro, right? All those things, and it's going to apply those keywords to the metadata. And then later, in a year, if I want to search bugs, I can type in bugs and it'll pull these photos up. Okay. Now we also have our destination and choose where it's going to go. For me, it's just going to go to a date folder called 2020 and then into a subfolder on the day that I shot these. Okay. So let's go ahead and hit import. And I'm going to look at y'all's questions. Oh, thank you, Phil. That's a great place. Library module shortcuts are help. Yeah, and with shortcuts and keyword shortcuts with Lightroom, it's kind of a double-edged sword. There's other software that like Capture One that is really customizable. You can do all the different hotkeys. You can assign all these different things, and you can really customize your workspace. Whereas Lightroom is a little bit more. This is what it is. The nice thing about that is you can always Google something, and it's going to give you the right answer. Whereas in other software, the answers for one person aren't necessarily going to apply to the other. And so it's a good and a bad. If you really like to have custom workspaces, Lightroom can be frustrating. But if you want to be able to search and say, hey, what's the keyboard shortcut for, the crop overlay tool? It's going to give you, a consistent answer every time. So good and bad, right? Consistency versus configurability, that's kind of to each their own. Okay. So if we have also, just while we're in library, I want to kind of show you some of the filters we can do. So I shot 2 different lenses. So if we go to metadata inside the library grid tool, I can see that I shot with 100 macro and a 100 to 400. Okay. So if we want to separate out, I want to look at just the macro photos I took, right? I could click just the 100 macro. If I want to look at the 100 to 400, I could look at just those. And I think this is a really good way. I use this quite a bit as a way to, oh, I didn't screen share. Hold on one second. Sorry about that. Let's try that again. So let me just, now that you can see it. So in the library module, and again, to get to the library module, it's the letter G. We can go to metadata as a way to filter our photos, right? I can look at just the 100 to 200, 100 to 400 lens. I can look at just the 100 macro lens. Okay. So imagine if you had a folder on your hard drive and you wanted to filter, 100 photos based on what lens you used, right? It would take you a long time to do it. And so in Lightroom, being able to filter based on metadata is a really great way to sort for specific things. For me, like I shoot astrophotography, so I might want to say, I might want to filter on shutter speed. So these top level menus here, they work from left to right. So by date, right, we have that date selected, this camera selected, and then we can filter down from there. But we can also customize which ones we see. So in this case, it says label. I might not want label. Maybe I want to look at shutter speed. And so now that gives me, of the 2 files, right, there was one that was at 32nd hundred and one at 1/8000th, right? So I could filter down to just the one I shot at 1/8000th or any other metadata, right? I have all these other metadata fields that I can filter down to. Okay. And some of the way of using all these metadatas, you can also create what's called a smart collection. So smart collection are rules-based filtering. It's a way to filter based on a set of rules, right? So maybe it's, hey, only show me 1-star photos that have a red label. Show me, and you can create them as well. Let me show you how to do that. Under collections, if we hit the plus button, it'll say new collection, smart collection. And then this plus button, we can add a bunch of rules or minus to get rid of them. So we might want to say, hey, show me everything that's 1 star or greater and has a color label that is red and, I don't know, has a keyword, label text. Anyway, we can, or pick flag, right, is unflagged, right? So show me everything that wasn't flagged that's red and 1 star. And we could create that rules-based filtering, right? 1 star, reds, unflagged. And so no photos match. Okay, of course not. But it's just a way to create a rules-based way of filtering. Does anybody remember like old days of email? I had an application called Eudora, and we could have like filtering rules for incoming mail. This is kind of the same thing where we have filtering rules for incoming files, right? So again, if I want to go back to my collection, I can just hit Kids Exploring, and it's going to pop back to those 3 photos that I added to the collection Kids Exploring. Yeah, sorry, Sherry. I didn't hit screen sharing there for a second. Yeah, sorry about that. That was my mistake. Okay. How's everybody doing? Do we have specific questions on import or library, filtering metadata, anything along those lines? Yeah, don't be scared of the chat box. Go ahead and throw your questions in. I can talk about this quite a bit. Also, hey Brent, if you're out there, can you post a link? We're going to be doing a full Lightroom 201 class, I think on the 20th, I believe, and that's going to be going. We're going to be doing a big deep dive over the develop module, and so we're going to be going through a set of photos and showing what all the tools do, right? What the what the gradient tool does, what the radiant filter, what the brush tools do, how to mask, how to sharpen, how to organize, how to do HDRs, how to do all that stuff in the develop module. And we're going to be doing a real deep dive on that. We'll be doing that virtually because pandemic. Yeah. So if y'all have other specific questions though, please throw them out there because it's easier for me to answer questions. There you go. Yeah. Online. Thank you. Yeah, Mike. Yeah, exactly. So my workflow, yeah. So I import photos. They come into my hard drives, and they're separated out. So I have like a picture folder with year, month, date. Okay, Mary. Vertical transform. Okay, guided. Okay, that's a good one. That's a good one. I'm going to flip over to a different photo to show you that one. But yeah, that's a good one. You know, that's a really good question, Mary. There's I think one of the things that Lightroom has done better um, is it's gotten very good at the transform tools have gotten way better. Very they when they first came out, I think in Lightroom 4, it was very hit or miss, right? You basically had like auto, level, and vertical, and they've gotten a lot better over the last couple years to the point where they're usable. So let me find a good photo to use them on real quick. Let me create a. So yeah, okay. So we have this nice skyline of um, that we can select. Let me brighten it up just a little bit, make it a little easier to see for everybody. Okay, so this is long exposure on the Mississippi River at New Orleans. But what Mary was asking was down here toward the bottom, we have not lens correction, but transform tool. Okay, so I'm going to turn it off and just to kind of show you what I'm starting with. Okay, so if we notice on the right edge over here, that sky, that steeple is pointed up and to the right. If we notice this building on the left over here, it's kind of pointed up and to the left. Okay. And that's, I'm shooting with a wide angle. I'm at 22 mil, right? So that's a little bit harder to correct. And so we have a couple of options, right? We have auto, which is going to just try to take all the lines and square them up. And so if we hit auto, let's see if it gives us a good, it usually gets close. Not too bad, but if we notice this radio tower here, it's still pretty leany. It did do a good job with the horizon, but it's okay. It's not great. It's probably 90% of the way there. So I'm going to turn that off again. This is always a good reason why, if you're shooting with a wide angle or something where you're going to be doing transform, you want to give yourself some extra pixels on the edge, right? Because the transform tool is going to take away some pixels, right? Maybe a couple percentage points on either edge, just because it needs those pixels to reshape the photo. Okay, so if we go to guided, and I think this is really the coolest one, it's going to give us these kind of chopsticks. Let me delete those because I've already done it on this photo. This in Photoshop, it's very similar, but we can basically draw our incorrectness, and it'll attempt to straighten. Okay, so if I start on this left building over here, okay, I'm just going to click and then drag down, and with this line, I'm just going to mimic the angle of that building, right? So along the vertex of that building, I'm going to draw that. And then on the right-hand side, let's say we want to take this radio tower. I'm just going to draw a line that mimics the shape that it's pointing, right? So like at the building of an edge or like any corner of a room, right? And we're just going to draw those in. And then it's going to take those two lines and straighten them out. Okay. And so that's going to give us yeah, that looks pretty good. Because this area right here was actually crooked. So auto was trying to use that. It is crooked in real life. And so it was trying to straighten that, but I didn't want it. And so guided allows you to draw the specific problems that you have. And it's going to try to level, to make them vertically, perpendicular to your horizon. So that's a really good tool. It's gotten a lot better in the last couple versions of Lightroom. I use it quite a bit in architecture, real estate, landscape, all that type of stuff. Yeah, that's a really good tool. Good question there. Yeah, so Sherry says, yeah, so photos can live in multiple collections. Yeah, so one file could be in multiple collections, right? You might have a collection just for one trip, and then you might have a collection of collections for all your trips. So another thing, if you're dealing with horizons, let's say you're shooting, landscapes, right? And there's not a clear horizon line. There is another tool at the very, very top, and it's under the crop tool again. And it's this little bubble level looking tool. And it allows you to draw the horizon line. And then it's going to rotate your file based on that horizon line. And so like I thought I was close, but it'll make it's a nice way to make some micro adjustments to your photo. Yeah, so that horizon tool under the crop tool, and it looks just like kind of a bubble level, right? It's called the straighten tool. Yeah. Yes, I do one-on-ones. So yeah, that's a good question though, Mary. For me and my workflow, I usually try auto. It usually gets me pretty close. A lot of time it gets me close enough. And then if I really need to get something precise, I'm going to use the guided tool as a way to really get pixel perfect verticals and horizontals. The other tools I don't use as much. Vertical attempts to only correct from the vertical positions. Level only tries to correct horizontal positions. So let's say you shot a staircase, right? Level would only care about each line of the stairway, right? It wouldn't care about the banisters. Vertical would care about the banisters, but not the steps. Okay. And full tries to do everything. Full is going to give you weird results. Just so you know, it's going to skew your photo generally. Yeah, full can get weird. But yeah, auto and guided are typically what I use. Yeah, good questions. Oh yeah, and then once after you do guided, you have to click back in this. I say you have to put your chopsticks back in the bag. So after we've done these, right, and we've drawn our lines and everything's happened, we need to mouse back over and kind of put them back in that little pocket just to the left of upright. Okay. Yeah. 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 Lightroom kind of weird too in some things, like occasionally I will forget to uncheck something, and then it won't let me input a new thing because somewhere along the way I accidentally hit a value, like I put a letter X for a number value, and it can be a little bit finicky there. So let me go back to the stuff I shot this week, and let's take a look about some white balancing. Some different options there. So I can go back to this collection, kids exploring, and I'm going to go to this, my kids running across these steps, as a way to white balance kind of in the field, right? I was shooting with a really telephoto lens. I wasn't able to put my color checker in there, but to get a good white balance, all I need to do, I'm going to put my profile to Canon 5D4 PCU that I use with my color checker passport. Okay, and then I have this big eyedropper. And what the eyedropper does, it basically says, hey, click on something neutral gray, and we'll correct the rest of the photo around that. So luckily in this photo, I have lots of different neutral grays. So I can click on this eyedropper. right? So right now my white balance is 4,900 plus 5. So if I click on the eyedropper and drag it into the screen, my oldest son happens to be wearing gray pants. And I can click on the gray pants and it's going to try to white balance against those pants. That looks pretty good, right? 5,800. So it added about 900 Kelvin. Okay. We also have these kind of concrete blocks here. And I can just drag over anywhere that I think is the right value and hit click. And it's going to try to balance against that. And that gives me a much cooler tone. Okay. Both are valid, but it's an easy way. So for those of you that shoot like corporate events or anything where there's a name tag, or if you're shooting real estate, you can also click and drag these over the whites of people's name tags, or like on fixtures. So like light switches or baseboards, you can use this as a way to click and drag to find something neutral in the scene. Like he has a cloud on his shirt, right? So I can click on that and it's going to give me, it's going to correct, it had blue in it. So it's adding a bunch of red. But I just kind of click around sometimes to find the white balance that looks right. And then maybe I adjust slightly from there. So I'm like, okay, it's a little cool, but now I can take what the eyedropper gave me and adjust a little bit. So Jonathan, that was kind of for you too, right? If let's say you had a scene and there was white walls in the wheels of a tire, you could take that eyedropper and drag it over something that was white. For your landscape shooters, right? There's a white egret, so maybe I would want to white balance off the white feathers around his eye. I could click on that eyedropper tool, drag it over to kind of behind his eye, hit click, and it's going to try to white balance against the whites of his feathers. Okay, and that kind of gives me a little bit warmer tones, and that's kind of pleasing. So yeah, that's kind of a nice thing to do. Yeah. What other questions do we have? Mike, I think I answered yours. Yeah. Oh, there's some just develop specific questions, library. I do get asked quite a bit, like, where do I spend my time? I generally spend most of my time in develop. I use library, the filtering, the metadata, the collections as a way to set up my film strip, right? That thumb strip at the bottom. You could also call it the image hopper, to set up the work I'm going to do in the develop module. I am working on a book project. So I'm currently using the book tool. I'm trying to relearn that. It's been a while since I've used that. And I also use the print module quite a bit. I'm standing about 2 feet away from an Epson P800. And I use that quite a bit to, actually, I use Lightroom specifically to do all my printing because I can create presets inside of my Lightroom. So I have a preset for each printer that I use, for each paper size and each kind of image size. So Mike says, have you used a print module to create a presentation mat? Printing to a JPEG. Oh, you mean like using a big sheet of paper and printing a mat around the image itself? Am I understanding that correctly? Yes. I have never done that, but I know that some members of our photo club have. So I know that we have a print gallery up at a local coffee shop, and I know that a couple of our members did it that way. I've never done that way. But let's go look at the print module though. So let's say we have this nice photo of an egret. I'm going to crop down. Oh, that's too much. And then let's crop down just a little bit, and then we'll flip over to the print module. Okay, so let's say I love this photo of the egret. I'm going to go to my module print. Okay. And once everything loads back up, cool. So I just want to point out a couple things in the print module. I've created different templates for each paper that I've used, right? So I have my P800, and sometimes on my P600, I've already created printer and paper and image size profiles for them as a way to save myself from having to always reset it up. I don't want to tell you how much paper I'm sitting next to, but it's at least 12 boxes. So I love shopping at Precision because I get to go feel the papers. Once we can go back in the store, if you have questions on paper, Epson and Canon both have test books there, and you can go and feel the different paper types. And that's one of the advantages of having that local photo store like Precision, is you can go and feel the paper, right? You can't do that shopping online. So I don't want to tell you how much I've spent on paper and ink at Precision, but it's a large number. It's something like 200 a month. So thanks, y'all. So to do what you were asking, Mike, though, I believe it's under page. I'm not sure. I've never done that. I can get back to you. Send me an email and I'll send you that. It's something I've never done, so I don't want to try to tell everybody. I will say that if you're in the print module inside Precision, everything again starts on the left with this page setup. So let's create a new preset for a new paper type that I haven't created one. So if we go to page setup, okay, I'm going to select my printer right now, which is my Epson P800, and hit properties. Okay. Okay. And so let's create a new paper type. Let's say I'm printing on their new, I really like their Legacy. Let's say their Legacy Platine and sheet. Okay. And so I can do all my configurations here. Okay. The sheet feeder versus the roll feeder, the paper type, and all of that. Move this up so I can see it. Hit OK. Hit OK again, and then I can save that right as a preset. So under this template browser, I can hit plus, and I can say, Epson P800. I'm going to print, a 13x9 sheet, and let's use the Legacy Platine, if I can spell. And then I can create that. So now anytime I want to go back and use that paper, I know that my printer's already set up for that. If you're using a paper type that doesn't come preloaded, to get to that, all the way at the bottom, all the way in the right-hand column, we have color management, and we can pick different color managements here. So if you download certain ICC profiles, this is kind of where you get to them. So if you selected a paper type that comes with your printer, you would want to hit Manage by Printer. If you've selected a like Moab, right? Moab doesn't come preloaded into an Epson printer, right? So if I knew I was printing on the Moab Slick Rock, I want to use this profile. So be careful that you don't select two profiles because you'll double stack any adjustments that the printer's making. You'll get some very strange results. Ask me if I've done that. I'm raising my hand. Yes, I've done that. I've ruined at least 10 sheets of fine art paper by double stacking my profiles. So if you've selected a profile under page setup, don't also select it under color management. Okay. So if you've selected it on the left, let the printer do it on the right. And if you download an ICC, it'll tell you kind of what profile to use on setup. But we also have a printing class that covers a lot of this. Let me flip back over to questions. Perceptual. I stay as perceptual. I don't notice a ton of difference, but for me, perceptual is where I tend to stay. Yeah. So yeah, Mike, if you have questions, let me find the answer to that and send me an email. My email is josh@Zolox, and I'll find that answer for you because I know that some friends of mine have done it. It's just something that I typically don't do. I use cutout mats for my photos instead of making them around the print. But I think you could also do it on the cell padding size. You could change your cell padding size, right? Because this is a 13x19 sheet of paper, but we're printing a 12x18. So you could also create your padding size here, right? And it's going to do it that way. And so by changing your cell size, you can change kind of how much, border around the photo you want, or create a custom size. But that's not going to put like a logo or a signature or anything like that on it. Any other questions? Anything else we can answer for y'all? Hey, Brent, we throw in our printing class as well, since people are kind of interested about that. I don't know when the next time we're going to do it. But yeah, we do have a printing class that Canon sponsors, and we print on different paper and different sizes. And it's a really fun class. We last time we had it, we made like, 10 or 15, 13x19 prints that Canon had let us use. So if you're interested in printing, I think it's a great class. I'm also, that one. And then there's also one on calibration monitor. Oh, August 21st. Yeah. if you're interested in camera calibration and monitor calibration, I think that's kind of a great foundational step as well. We're in the process of setting that up. Maybe we'll have those details for you on the next Hangout. But we're working on doing that because I think that's something you could do from home with like an X-Rite color spectrometer and like a color checker passport. I think those are good things to do from home while we have time to do them. Getting your monitor calibrated and getting your camera calibrated. That's going to go a long way to getting the most out of your files. Yeah, thanks, Phil. Hey, and guys, just so y'all know, like Precision's been in over backwards. Like I've been shopping there since 1997, and to have a local store doing these types of things it's few and far between. So thank you to Precision. I love you guys. So this is great. Hey, Dave. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, especially getting printer and ink local is great. Hey, Dennis, what's up, man?